So, and just as a reminder to everyone, these meetings are recorded. We will then post them later on our website at the Local Government Center, as well as MACo will post it on their website. For those of within your organization that do not have the opportunity to participate in this live, they can always watch the video later on. All right, another option for you if you have a question and you don't want to use the chat, but you'd rather engage in asking your question and in some sort of a conversation, if you find your name under the participant list, so expand the participant list, find your name, and if you hover the cursor over your name, there should be a little circle with a hand icon in it, and if you click on that, that'll give an indication that you'll go to the top of the queue. We can see who's asking a question, and we will call upon you when the time is right. And then you can unmute, ask your question, and that's how that part will work. So I think with that, a little bit of housekeeping taken care of. Again, thank you for joining. Those that have now joined us, we're at 58, and we'll see how many more we get for the session. I think now we'll turn the time over to folks at MACo. So I'll turn it over to Jason and company, or whoever else is there that was ready to speak.
Hey all, thanks Dan. I'm not sure if you guys can see us because I'm only showing Dan's picture and nobody else's, and I know that generally I can see quite a few people. So I don't know if we have some internet connectivity issues here in the office or not, but if I could get some thumbs up or some chats from folks to confirm you can hear me at least, that would be good. Yeah. Today, a couple things I want to go through. One is the ARPA guidance is out by Treasury, at least the initial set of rules. And then we also are going to have a conversation about 32, which is the state fund. For those of you that have access to the email that we sent out that had the PowerPoint presentation, I'm going to go through some of the slides on that. So that would be your reference point. NACo did a really good job of at least outlining where we're at today, what we know, what we don't know. A couple of things that I would caution is look to move into getting the federal funds into your counties, and those will be direct payments. One of the things that's been confusing nationwide is questions about whether the small counties under 50,000 would have to ask the state for their money. They do not. All of you will get a direct payment when you ask for your money in either this month or next month. And then you will get a second payment next year, and they will go directly into your bank accounts, whatever bank account you give the federal treasury. So you do not have to deal with the state on these dollars. That's the first thing. In that packet, there was 4 or 5 different reference materials that are on the NACo website that are I also sent out as attachments. One is the interim final rule. That's a 150-page document that goes soup to nuts on what the funds were intended for, all the way through what the eligible uses are. I will tell you that if you read it, you're still going to have questions about what is eligible and what is not. If you have a question or a potential project that you're looking to do, and I haven't answered your question today, send me an email. We'll reach out to NACo and try and get a more solid answer so that we don't move forward too quickly. And that's the next thing I want to sort of preach as we move forward. Patience with this is okay. We have 4 years to have these dollars obligated and about 6 to have them spent. So let's make sure that we spend them in a manner that does not make it so that you end up with the federal treasury trying to capture money back. So documents that are available through the treasury are a fact sheet, FAQs, a quick reference guide, and then a list of how much each county will get. We also have the fund allocations on our website, so you can reference those there. And then lastly, the interim rule. If you want to make comments on the interim rules, they're due on the 9th of July. As you read those documents, there's basically 4 different things you should be paying attention to. If it says shall, then you have to do what it says. Shall is used in certain instances throughout the documents, but pay attention for that word. That means you must. May obviously means you have discretion, so that's a local decision. And then lastly, it's gonna have some verbiage in there about encourage or should. So Treasury is asking you to give strong consideration to those things, but it's not required. So keep that in mind as you read it. And then any of the dollars that you're gonna spend, think about proportional and consistent. So one of the things that you could do is you could mail your money out in $200 checks to every single one of your residents. But that has to be consistent with what the federal government already did with their 600 and their $1,400 checks. So as you think about how you're going to use these dollars, be thinking about proportional and consistent. The other way it needs to be consistent or proportional is if you're able to show lost revenue, only the amount of the lost revenue can be used in the ways that I'll talk about here in a few minutes that are exceptions. So one of those exceptions is roads and bridges. If we can prove you have lost revenue, then you can use the lost revenue piece of the equation. So if you get $1 million, 100 grand is lost revenue, you can use 100 grand on roads and bridges. Which leads to the slide that I was most nervous about sending out, which started with the title of Common Questions on Recovery Funds. And it's asked, how can counties use those recovery funds? And it lists roads and bridges. The only way you can do roads and bridges is with lost revenue. And we have to prove that out. So let's just go through each one of these things. And I sent out a follow-up email when I started getting lit up with questions. Capital improvements, COVID-19 mitigation related, part of your COVID-19 mitigation plan if you have one. Stormwater is now a piece of what is included with water and wastewater projects. So any county that has a stormwater system or needs to make stormwater upgrades is going to be automatically eligible. So you can use it for those. If you're doing jail upgrades, has to be COVID-19 related, spacing. You can do air filtration in any of your buildings is acceptable in capital improvements, but for the most part, you need to tie it back to COVID-19 and mitigation response. If you can't tie it back closely, reach out and let's see if one of these other exceptions might fit. We talked about roads and bridges, property tax relief. They are checking on that. We think that there is an option through the household benefit piece of the eligibility in the guidelines. So hold tight on that, but there may be a way that we can get money to your property owners that could then be used as property tax relief in the form of a rebate after they pay their property taxes or something along those lines. But we are not 100% sure on that yet. If you want to apply for additional federal dollars using these, you need to check and make sure that if they call for local match via statute, that there's either a waiver or that the program will allow you to use these funds. Most likely, if there's a statutory requirement, for those of you that have economic development districts, think the funding that the local match for EDA funding, this money would not be able to be used for that. It's statutory that it's required. So if you want to use this to match federal dollars, you need to make sure with that program that it's eligible. Most likely it won't be if it's statutory. Special purpose districts. If it's to the benefit of your county, you can help a special purpose district. You cannot give your money to another county. So it's sort of a weird provision. You can't give it to another county, but you can give your money away to the state if you want. But please talk to me before you do that, because I'm going to talk you out of it. You can spend your money on compliance and audit costs. So most of you will have to go through a single audit act audit. You can also use payroll for the person that is helping administer the funds within your county. And you also may hire a third party administrator, but back to the proportional and consistent. If you're going to pay your consultant 50% of the money you get, that's probably not proportional. So keep that in the back of your mind if you're going to go out to a consultant. NACo is 99% sure that we can put the money in an interest-bearing account, but if that changes, we will let you know. Eric's messing with my
Keep talking.
Eric's messing with computers. So as of right now, go ahead and plan on putting it in an interest-bearing account per your investment guidelines. If that changes, we'll let you know. Pension funds. You cannot use the money to shore up a pension fund. But if you decide to do premium pay or going backwards or forwards, and you pay into a pension fund as a part of that regular pay, a percentage, then that regular payroll deduction or addition would be eligible. So day-to-day payroll related pension investments, it's eligible, but a backfill or a shoring up of a pension system is not eligible. You cannot put the funds in reserve or put them in a rainy, quote unquote, rainy day fund. So those are ineligible uses. Revenue loss is county-wide. And if for those of you that want us to run that calculation, there's two different ways you can do it. One is on actual losses over a period, and the other is based on an average inflationary increase that's allowed by Treasury of 4.1%. But it has to be entity-wide. So if you lost money on your fare, you can't just claim the money for that you lost on your fare. We need to look at the entity county-wide, and the baseline that they're using for revenue categories is based on the census questionnaire that you folks get, I think, every 5 years. So those categories of revenue is what we would use. Debt service payments are not allowed. So if you have a bond payment on a project that you did 2 years ago related to COVID, you can't pay that debt off with this. And then lastly, I just said this, you can help the state out if you'd like. I hope that we can find you ways to spend the money locally for your taxpayers. It's not passing those dollars on to the state. But what it does say is that you can use these dollars with the 632 money and mix and match it with state dollars. Key dates. So March 3rd is the date, is basically the start date for these dollars, with one exception. If you want to give bonus or premium pay to your employees, and first thing I'm going to tell you is you need to talk to Mackenzie about it, because just because it's allowed in this legislation does not mean that it's a good idea or even legal from an HR perspective. But should you choose to give premium pay, you can go clear back to March of last year. That's the one exception to the March 3rd of 2021 date. Everything else starts from that day forward. Any expenses you incurred prior to that, not eligible. So write down 3/3 of 21 as your kickoff date for when you start looking for expenses. July 9th, I talked about, is the response dates for any comments you have on the interim final rule. Then the next dates we get into are your reporting guidelines. There are reports due as a result of accepting these dollars. Your first one is due August 31st, and that will be your first interim report to U.S. Treasury. Your next one will be due October 31st, which is the first of your quarterly reports, which are project reports and your expenditure reports. So as you start using the money, you will be reporting out what you spent it on. And that it's due on October 31st for the time period through 9/30. Then looking out to the end of this, the use of these funds by December 31st of 24, you have to have had the funds obligated, and probably a better way of putting this is under contract. So if you're going to do a project and you have it under contract by the 24th, December 31st of 24, then you're okay. All funds have to be expended and all work complete by December 31st of 26. Those are the key dates. They're in that presentation, and we can get those out to you as they come near. To get your money, there's a link in the Treasury guidance that I believe you were sent. You need your DUNS number, you need a SAM number, and then the surprise that we got was There's also a link to a site called ID.me, and it is going to ask for personal information of who is going to, the person in your county who's the quote unquote recipient of the funds. It's going to ask them for their social security number, a passport or driver's license number, and I think it even has some facial recognition software attached to it. I know it's very personal information. I've had pushback from a few folks that don't like the idea of that. ID.me is a vendor that Treasury uses, and you know they're not wavering in the fact that somebody's going to have to provide that information in order for you to get your dollars. So know to expect that. Know to expect that the person that you're going to ask to fill in the blanks when they ask for the money is going to have to give up that information. So be thoughtful when you decide who's going to do that, that they'll be asked to give that personal information. All right. Let's talk about some eligible uses. I think most of you already know water and sewer infrastructure is eligible. It's in the legislation. The one new addition to that is the stormwater piece. They are using the drinking water SRF and the clean water SRF programs as the definitions of water and wastewater. And so that's why stormwater got included. You can replace your revenue loss, but we would need to work through some equations for that. NACo intends to put on a separate phone call webinar just related to how to make that calculation. So for those of you that think you might have incurred revenue loss to a level that you want to pursue that, let's hold tight and then let's get that calculated. Public health response, all COVID-19 mitigation costs going forward from March 3rd are eligible. Things like ventilation systems in your buildings are eligible. You can pay for medical expenses. If you have families in your community that have incurred medical expenses, you can help with that. You can pay for certain health and public safety staff if a majority of their time is dedicated to COVID-19 response. And so the difference between this and the CARES Act was, if you remember, the CARES Act gave us presumptive eligibility. It said that everybody in public safety and everybody in public health is presumed to be spending 100% of their time dealing with COVID-19. That's no longer the case. We have to go through a test. You need to either by individual in that department test to see if they're spending a majority of their time. And if they are, then you can apply 100% of their payroll. Or you can go by department. And if the department as a whole is spending more than a majority of their time, you can assign it to the department. So if the sheriff's department as a whole is spending a majority of their time doing COVID-19 response or mitigation, then you can take the payroll of your sheriff's department. Again, let's be careful as we look at these. Let's make sure that we document how we did the test so that if we're ever questioned, we can say, yes, here's how we looked at it. Here's how we proved out that these folks were all spending a majority of their time dealing with COVID-19. I think probably, given where we're at as a state, the easiest one will probably be your public health officers and the folks surrounding them. Those are probably most likely. I don't know that we have sheriff's departments that are still responding to that, or some of your other ancillary staff. Another eligible category of using the dollars. You can give this money to your businesses. You can give it to your taxpayers. Here's my caution. If you want to go that route, you are the responsible entity to make sure that they used it properly and according to what you said they should use it for. So if you want to give them some sort of just a refund, if you are doing a workforce development program for them, retention program, you're responsible for the reporting. But you can give these dollars out to your communities in several different ways. You can pick certain industries that were impacted. So Rosebud County. So yes, you can request your money. And I don't believe you're going to be asked how you're going to spend it when you ask for it. If you are, or somebody's filled out the forms, I can't get in there to see exactly what they ask you. But the things that I know about are your SAMs, your SAM number, your DUNS number, and personal identification. And then I think they send, and your banking information, and they send you the money. Premium pay, we talked a little bit about this. All your county employees are considered essential. So everybody on your payroll would be eligible for premium pay. Again, you can reach back to last March with those dollars if you so choose, and all of your workers would be eligible. The limit on that is up to $25,000 per individual, and I think it's there's a limit of $13 per hour on each individual as well. But again, give me a call from confirming the maximum. I don't know that anybody's going to give that sort of a bump. But from a logistical HR standpoint, please ask Mackenzie how you should handle that, or if you should handle that. And then the last broad category is broadband infrastructure. I would recommend that if you're interested in investing in broadband, that we take a really hard look at the partnering with the state dollars, or encourage your broadband providers to use those state dollars. There's some hiccups with your ability to invest in broadband. And I think the only statutory way that you are allowed is through the state dollars. So if you're looking to do broadband in your community or your county, let me know, and let's make sure that legally we can invest in that. So again, supporting public health response, COVID-19 mitigation and containment, medical expenses, behavioral health care. Very broad category. They really didn't put much in the way of constraints around this. So if you want to boost up the programs within your regional mental health facilities or locally with programs, most likely it's going to fit within the parameters of the legislation. And then again, you can, if you meet the test of a majority of their time public health and safety staff, Eric's, hold tight, please.
I'm just gonna reconnect this internet so we can start getting ready for question and answers. You can keep talking.
Okay. What was that, Eric? I didn't catch that.
He said I could keep talking now. All right, so, now we got a security key.
You keep talking. I got this.
All right, let's start with some Q&A, and then before I get into House Bill 632, I'd like to broadly, you are aware of all the parameters. Let's get some.
Jason, there's a question in the chat that asks if there's a recommendation or a suggestion you might have on who should be requesting those monies, whether it's the clerk recorder, a commissioner, the treasurer, who within the structure of the county would it make sense to be that point person?
My recommendation would be, it would be the chair of the commission. If not them, then the treasurer.
And I'll just also jump in real quick here. In the discussions that we've been facilitating with the League of Cities and Towns and the National League, one of the things, and I'm sure NACo's likely saying the same thing, but as this, consider this a dry run, if you will, as the federal government is going through the consideration of an infrastructure program. One of the things that they're looking at is how well are the local governments responding to a direct payment from the federal government. And they're looking to this, the ARPA, as a potential, can local governments respond to a direct payment? And maybe that would be the way they would look to investing on the infrastructure by sending direct payments to cities and counties, rather than having it go through states and federal programs. So I think everyone's watching this process to see if this would be a new way of funding, have major funding bills be going directly to local governments. So I think as Jason is saying, that it's important we follow the rules, make sure we're doing well in the reporting, and that we can show our competence at this level that, yeah, we are capable of handling additional investments in this format. And I don't know, Jason, if you have any thoughts from, if NACo's been saying the same thing, or what your thoughts are on that concept.
So our concentration has been on trying to decipher the 150-page set of rules into real on-the-ground eligible expenses for our counties and sort of start a bullet list. And then, first step from my perspective is let's get the money into the county's hands. The second step is identifying an eligible expense. I have no worries past once we've identified eligible expenses that the counties will account for it properly.
Yeah.
But I do have some concerns about making sure that whatever avenue each county takes to use those dollars is eligible, because I'm more fearful of messing that up and having a county have to pay back than I am speculating on whether or not infrastructure funds will come at all. And beyond that, whether they would come direct. I think that's a separate fight. I do think some folks are probably watching how the smaller counties deal with these dollars. But if we follow the steps, if we're mindful of how we work this forward, if we don't get in a huge rush, then I don't see any issues from any of our Montana counties, should we ever have the opportunity to get additional infrastructure funds. So I don't like to get the cart ahead of the horse. Infrastructure discussion is outside of this and makes me nervous to try and put the two together. These dollars are coming and they're in our hands, and I think what our mission will be is to invest those dollars in an eligible way that moves the dial in our communities to the greatest extent possible going forward in the future. So that's what we need to identify. It will vary across the state greatly. Some of you folks may want to get the money out to your households in the form of property tax relief. Some of you may want to invest it in a water or a sewer district. And George just had something really funny happen. So questions?
The county allocation funds that you were talking about, that's from your website. Someone's asking for the link on that.
It is in our website.
I'll see if I can find it and add it to the chat for you.
So can you hear me, Jason?
Just barely, Carl.
So my question was, is I tried typing it in the chat, but anyway, can we use our money to match like a town's water project, like they put in for some of the state money and it's got a 15 or 20 or 25% match? Can we use our money to match their projects?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, water and sewer is most likely, drinking water and sanitary sewer most likely is eligible. Where I would want some clarification is because NACo gave indications you can't give your money to another county. If you're looking to invest in a regional system, I think you can because it's because water's eligible. I just want to make sure that doesn't cause a hang up. But a local water system, a water sewer district, or your town's water or sewer system, yes. Well, remember, you are responsible for reporting your expenditures.
All right, Jason, we've got another question here. It says, this is from Danette Gleason. It is my understanding that the state of Montana will be distributing the funds within the next few days. Why do we need to apply for the fund? And I thought NEU did not apply.
So the state of Montana is not going to distribute $1 of county direct funds. You need to ask Treasury for those dollars or you won't get them. Counties are all getting their money directly from the feds. There's now cities and towns are a little different. Cities and towns less than 50,000 population, which is almost all of our cities and towns, do get their money from the state. So they're getting a pass through. You are not. Your money never touches state's hands. So the allocation that's in that link that's on our website comes directly from Treasury into the bank account that your person that gives their facial recognition and their social security number into that bank account.
Jason, this is Jim. So that is different, I think, from if this young lady was referring to the state money, which you're about to talk about, right?
So, so there's a pot of money that went directly, coming directly to counties. And when I say counties, I mean nationally, every single county and even the Alaskan boroughs get a direct payment. All cities and towns above 50,000 in population get a direct payment. The rest of the cities and towns below 50,000, their money's going through the state. And there's a separate pot of money that gets distributed from the state directly to them. They're guaranteed to get that. It's just they added a pass-through mechanism in it. In addition to that, every state got more money. And House Bill 632 is Montana's more money and how they're going to allocate it. Within that more money, there's a whole bunch of allocation to DPHHS programs, schools, etc., state capital improvement projects. And then there's two other pots of money that could directly impact projects in your communities. One is broadband, the broadband communications piece of the pie. And then the one that you're probably going to be most interested in is the infrastructure piece of the pie. And it's for water and sewer projects. If you have a water or sewer project and you want to leverage the money you get directly, you can then reach into the pot of money that's the infrastructure. Within the infrastructure pot of money, there's two allocations. One is they've set aside a certain amount of money for each county to ask for if you have an eligible use. And these are different eligible uses. These are the ones the states put on it, not the feds. So you can ask for those dollars for that eligible use. And if it is eligible, they're going to send you that money. So it's the money set aside for you. If you ask for it and it's an approved eligible use, you're going to get it. Beyond that, you can also jump into what they're calling the competitive program. There's an additional, I think, $250 million in a competitive pot that you can further leverage your money by submitting an application. And that's where, they're going to look at match and, need and several other criteria that they're developing as we speak to grow your pot of money again. So you've got a direct payment coming. You're guaranteed those dollars. You can use them any way you choose within the Treasury guidance, within the federal statute. You have an allocation from the state of Montana, a set aside of money that if you can prove to them or give them a project that they deem eligible, you're going to get. So not competitive, set aside for you. And then thirdly, a competitive pot of money for infrastructure. And the way they're going to decide that is they've got a commission set up. It's got 3 House members, 3 Senate members, and 3 members being appointed by the governor. That committee has not been brought forward publicly that I'm aware of as of yet. They have to meet by June 11th. And I think they have a quick turnaround on when they have to make a decision on the first realm of projects for me. And I believe that's in July.
I saw Danette talk from Butte Silverbow's perspective, just one additional piece for Butte Silverbow and for Anaconda Deer Lodge. Yes, you're going to get your one portion of your payments from the state, but do not forget to log into the Treasury system or you're going to leave your county allocation unused. So you city county entities out there, you get 2 chunks of money, one distributed through the state, but you still have to go through Treasury to get your county money.
Did you catch that? So if you are a city county entity, you need to ask through the Treasury portal for your county share of your money, and that will come direct. The city and town piece of your money will come from the state, because all of those city counties, I believe, are below 50,000 in population.
Okay, we've got a hand raised. Commissioner, you want to go ahead and ask your question? Commissioner, can you hear me? You've got your hand raised. If you want to go ahead and ask your question, you can unmute. Well, why don't we go to Kimberly? She also has her hand raised. You got a question, Kimberly? Okay. Kimberly, you there? All right, let's go back. Commissioner, you able to unmute and ask your question?
I'm gonna try and answer Shirley's while we're trying to figure out.
Okay.
Shirley, I have not seen an assigned fund number. We'll reach out to D of A and ask, but I believe that our guidance will be that these are, again, one-time unanticipated federal revenues. At least this first payment for sure. The second payment gets a little bit iffier as far as unanticipated.
Definitely Single Audit Act compliant.
And yes, and Single Audit Act will come into play for most likely all of you.
Okay, how about Paula at Teton County? Would you go ahead and unmute if you can?
Yep, I'm unmuted. So my commissioners nominated me to go through the ID.me. It is, I mean, I gave up for a bio something background check. I had to do the facial scan. I did go in there and try to get the money. And when I went through it, Montana was grayed out. So I had to stop. It wouldn't let me click on Montana as my state. And I did reach out, I don't know, to the help desk or whatever. I've not heard back. Who do we contact when we have trouble like that to get into the system?
Well, shoot it through us and we'll reach out. I will tell you that none of Montana's counties were in the system. I think one or two people got through clicking other. If you did it that way and you got in, don't have to do anything further. If you stopped, Paula, like you did, try and go back in. Our understanding is they now have all of that fixed. And if not, please let me know.
Okay, perfect. I will try. Thank you.
Yesterday, when you're supposed to have fixed that portion.
Yeah, we had a noon call yesterday and they announced that they thought they had all that fixed. So I thought you'd gone in and got through on the other category. I would have reached out directly.
Christy Jones is asking, our 911 system needs update. Could that come under behavioral health care?
I don't know that I would put it under that, but if your number of calls, etc., were increased due to COVID-19 and you were needing to upgrade because of mitigation needs, then I might be able to be talked into it. But be thinking about COVID-19 response related to 911. You get really gray, and I had one other question about the consoles in a 911 center, and same sort of response. I think we want to really think through the tie so that we could defend it.
Another question, a couple of questions on the fund number. Has local government services assigned a fund number yet for the ARPA funds?
If not, we will follow up and get that out to everybody.
I'm sending Cheryl a message right now.
Eric's emailing D of A right now.
Okay. All right, so let's go back to the hand being raised. Commissioner, I see your hand still raised. Are you able to unmute and ask your question?
I don't see
No,
it.
no, I don't know why my hand was raised. I must have accidentally hit a button.
Okay,
So
okay.
just ignore it.
All right, I'll took you off there. There you go. All right. Let's see. Any other questions? So counties were not able to participate in the Paycheck Protection Program. So if we had employees that took time off because of COVID and it was paid out of a sick time or FMLA, is that considered possible or revenue replacement?
So the way they've worded it is not revenue replacement. So you've paid out those dollars. What we need to look at is your overall county revenue loss and whether or not you incurred any. So, frankly, that revenue loss is aimed more at states with sales tax that saw a pretty significant decline in their amount of revenues. But what we would need to do is take an overall look at your county, and we would use fiscal year 19 because that was your last full year without COVID. And then we would project it forward into the last couple of years and see if you had a decrease in revenue. The feds are allowing a 4.1% inflationary automatic increase. So if you're in a small rural eastern Montana county, and I know a lot of you, and you're not growing, that 4.1% might get you some revenue loss that you could then free up those dollars for more general county uses. I get real nervous with giving any sort of advice on back paying or backfilling FMLA or sick time that you paid out, but your county folks are eligible as essential employees and would fall within the ability where you could pay them the premium pay going backwards and going forward. But backfilling your coffers, I would probably have to say no at this point.
And do you want to just touch on that question again? Jason, it was asked again if, can you request the funds even though you don't know what you want to spend them on?
Yes. And I'm curious, I would like to hear from the first county that gets through and gets their money ordered, because we were having a debate, Eric and I, yesterday about whether you were going to have to identify that. Nothing that I've heard from NACo or Treasury has indicated that you do. So I think they send you the money, you sit on it until we figure out how you're going to spend it.
And then report back on how you spent it.
And you report out on how you spent it. Correct.
So another question from Paula Buff, would creation of an election center in order to accommodate social distancing qualify under the capital improvement category?
If you can tie it to the mitigation of COVID, then I think so. But that's not a lot of detail. And what I don't want is trying to squeeze too big of a round peg in a square hole. If that's really why you're doing it and it's defensible, then my short answer would be yes. If we're trying to do a great big improvement project and we're trying to squeeze COVID into it, I'm getting more nervous. So I would like to have a side conversation about your specific project, but capital projects that are going to be done to mitigate COVID-19 are eligible.
So part of the problem with us responding to questions that were different than the CARES Act funding is we could actually sit eyeball to eyeball with the state folks that were on the hook for the appropriate spending of CARES money. We could pre-screen your requests. We could kind of check before you purchased on things like renovations and equipment purchases. We don't have that ability with these funds, and counties, since you're direct recipients, you guys are going to be the ones that are ultimately held responsible for making appropriate expenditures. I do think because the White House has created an office to help coordinate the distribution of ARPA funds and we have access to them, we'll be able to get some questions answered, but not to the level that we did with CARES Act. And that's going to be frustrating.
The big difference between CARES and this was the state's on the hook for the CARES Act money. If they let you request it and they paid it out to you and you used it for what we asked, then you don't have to ever worry about it again. This is different. This money's coming directly to you. And if we spend it outside the parameters of what is allowed, they can ask for it back. So we do not want to do that. We're going to be more conservative in our guidance as to what is and what isn't eligible. I'm going to really be trying to push for categories that we are pretty sure about and not get into too many gray areas. But if there's something that's important and you want to move forward, we'll reach out to Treasury and ask them specifically and see if we can get a response.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that as a counties, their first thing to do is to look at what does the guidance say from Treasury and figure out, does this project fit within that category? And where it gets kind of gray, maybe reaching out to you folks at MACo saying, well, what do you think? And if you, then the next would be to appeal to Treasury directly or to this office at the White House is. I'm just trying to think of what would be an order, so you're not inundated and having to be the say so, yes or no, but you're saying they're self-determined, look at what the guidance says, talk it over with you folks, maybe reach out to Treasury in the White House's office.
That's what we're saying from your, as your staff at MACo, we'll be the conduit between Treasury, the White House, and the funky and creative questions you're gonna dump on our laps.
Through us, it will be much like the CARES Act. If we're gonna reach out to Treasury, we're gonna wanna phrase the question in a manner that we think we can be successful in the response.
We'll also stay, I mean, one of the advantages that we have with the National Association is these questions are gonna come from all 3,000 counties across the US. We're gonna get some consistency. I know Montana will be creative and we'll have some of our own unique things, but we'll be able to be bouncing Treasury guidance and updated Q&As from that national level for you guys and share that information back. And then with these town halls, you guys will be able to share the information back and forth with each other too. So I think communication is going to be really important.
And as we start to hear back from you what you'd like to use your money on, that will then probably lead into other counties saying, yeah, we want to do that same thing. And it'll snowball from there. I mean, the great news is we have some time to figure this out. So over the next month or two, we'll all be trying to identify the highest and best use. And then if we're not sure if it fits, we'll find out. Added cell.
I say yeah.
Harry says yes. I struggle with how that's. I would say yes.
It's behavioral health.
Yeah, and the guidance so far on behavioral health is a broad and wide scope. So I may, because I'm not as brave, I may ask for somebody else to send me an email that says yes, you can, but off the cuff, I would say probably.
There's another question from Amy. Is there any way we can put together a list of what counties are spending their money on or kind of track that to help other counties? I'm assuming to help other counties say, oh, it worked here. Maybe it'll apply to us.
I read that as a creatively formed question saying, MACo, create a list of things counties are spending their money on. We will do that.
Yeah. Oh, so what, obviously our ask of you is, as we figure these things out, that you tell us.
Yeah.
Some of you are going to spend your money on more than one different type of thing, and some of you will invest it all in one thing. So, and you may or may not have asked us or consulted with us. So as you make those decisions, drop us an email and we're happy to compile that.
And some of that might be gleaned from the reporting, right? In August and October would be a time you can kind of pull some of that as well.
Absolutely. Once the reports are due, we could use those, but I think, folks are going to be much interested in a much sooner time frame than that and what folks are thinking about doing. I don't think we're going to get to the end of August without some counties using their money.
Yep. All right. Danette Gleason, you got your hand raised. You want to go ahead and ask your question?
Sure, thank you. Can we circulate back to the matching, using these funds as match? So I guess the conversation that we've had is if we use these funds to leverage possibly applying for some of those extra funds at the state. Can you kind of circle back to that for me?
Yeah, so you can use your direct allocation to leverage and match your, what I'll call set aside allocation at the state level, and further match the competitive pot of money at the state level. You may use that at the state level. If you're going to try and leverage it with, a CDBG grant or an EDA grant, or help your, regional economic development district build an RLF, and they're going to use it as match for a federal funds for an RLF, that's where I start to worry about whether it's eligible, and most likely is not, because those things statutorily call out local dollars as match, and these are not. But anything you're going to ask for from House Bill 632, you can use yours to match theirs. It's all the same pot of money. It's all out of the same congressional legislation.
Okay, I'm just thinking more of like showing an auditor, you know, because normally you can't supplant. So I'm trying to determine the audit question down the road of how I show that that's eligible.
Haven't we tossed out the no supplanting notion from CARES Act? This is a continuation of that.
So any of the dollars that the state got are basically the same dollars you're getting directly. And
Okay.
if there's a match requirement that the state has put on the federal dollars, that's a state requirement, not a federal requirement. In theory, they could have just sent you another check for whatever they wanted to, but they have put some match. I think in your allocation, you have to match 1-to-1 or up to the amount that you get direct. So there's some match requirement, but those are state stipulations, not federal. So you can use your direct for match for those.
Thank you.
So Dan, we have 5 minutes left. There's one more topic I wanted to, actually two things I wanted to address, and then we'll see if we can stick on longer if people want to. But the first one is we're getting ready for our district meetings, and we had conversations before about district meetings tacking on something that looked like training on the back end, and we are not going to do that this district meeting route, and we're not going to because we have a pretty extensive discussion time frame set aside for the legislative updates. There were some bills that came through in the latter stages of the session that are going to be pretty important for us to cover. Marijuana legislation, what you can and can't do with guns, land use planning, zoning, and limitations on ordinances and public health authority. So we will not do a kind of afternoon training session, and we're going to try and figure out a way to deliver some additional training outside of the district meeting. So most of you will probably be happy that we're not going to spend all day in our district meetings, but if you were expecting that, don't.
Yeah.
And then I want to talk about House Bill 257, and Tara, I'm hoping you're on too, because we don't have much time left, and I just want to do a very cursory request for all of you folks out there. House Bill 257 was originally a public health bill, and it addressed authority the public health had and health officers have. But latter stages of negotiations with the governor's office and the governor's mandatory veto that was approved, and so now the bill has become law, made this bill a big problem. And this is my request to you. All your resolutions and all of your ordinances, I need you to start thinking about pulling those together and reading through them so they can comply with the new restrictions in House Bill 257, and then I'll give them to you. No, and please understand, this is outside of public health. These are all of your county resolutions and all of your county ordinances. Cannot deny customers access to premises or goods or services. They cannot deny customers access to goods or services. They cannot require a fee or fine. They cannot revoke a license. They cannot provide a fine for private business owners and a misdemeanor charge. And you cannot bring any other retributive action against a private business on any ordinance, on any of your formal acts taken by your boards. And so Tara, I'll turn it over to you and put it in layman's terms.
So this is a really difficult situation, but how we read the bill right now is that we have to read the bill black and white, what it says. And they didn't link the changes to the ordinance and resolution statutes to just public health. So anything like zoning, subdivisions, floodplain regulations, decay ordinances, and it can be much broader than that, where you have a private business where you're saying that their customers cannot be served, you can't cite them for being in violation. So let's say that you have a residential zoning area that says you cannot sell fireworks in the residential zone, and somebody is doing that out of their garage. It's Eric's new business in Helena, Montana. And it's a violation of your zoning, but it's his private business. And pursuant to what this bill says and the changes to the language for resolutions and ordinances, you couldn't cite him for a civil fine, a criminal complaint, or even get an injunction against him. So it's an issue. It's not just an issue for land use. It's an issue for any resolution or ordinance you have. And I think we're just going to have to really proceed with caution and enforcement at this point in time, until we perhaps get a ruling out of the Montana Supreme Court that tells us, no, it only applies to public health. But to get such a ruling means we need an actual on the ground factual situation where we can get an emergency writ up to the Montana Supreme Court stating that this is a statewide issue and we need resolution of it. So for right now, be very careful of doing any enforcement.
And so that's my request, is just for you to go through and pull all your resolutions and ordinances to see if they have any impact on the transaction between a private business and its customer. Don't do anything. Don't amend them for right now. We're going to issue some further guidance. Just get them ready and start reading through them to see if they have any impact in terms of enforcement that impedes a private business selling its goods or services or delivering its goods and services to a customer.
And I think, I don't have the bill right up in front of me, that business includes a sole proprietorship. So it doesn't have to be a formal business. So just be aware of that. It can be me doing business as illegal RV park. Not that that's really happening, haha.
So Tara, what it means is that if I say this is my business, that's all the more, or does it need to be an LLC, or you can just say, make the claim, it's my business?
Sole proprietorship, you could make the business. I think the county could ask for some proof that you are acting as a business, such as, a check or something where you registered with the state for something, but it doesn't qualify it that, you could just claim you're running as a business.
And then a question is, any current criminal case that is for enforcement needs to be dismissed?
I'm not saying that. Tara, you can answer though.
I think that is a determination your county attorney definitely needs to make. The balancing act is, if you go forward with your criminal enforcement for a violation where somebody's providing access to a customer or a service and they're a business, you need to look at the other side of, are there damages that they can come back and claim against the county? So I think it's going to be a case by case scenario. I wouldn't just automatically dismiss anything, but I think there needs to be some conversations about whether it's in the best interest of the county to move forward with whatever enforcement you're doing. And if anybody wants to be the test case to get us to the Montana Supreme Court, please let us know.
So the governor's mandatory veto put a retroactive applicability date of May 1st and added the language "and enforce." So any rules, regulations, ordinances, resolutions in force or in place on May 1st are subject to these new revisions. Theoretically.
Yeah, everybody looks shocked, and so are we.
All right, M. Hutton, you have your hand raised. I know we're kind of shifted from the previous topics, but do you have a question?
Yeah, we were wondering if water would include like a levy study, or perhaps the funding, say, for the St. Mary's Canal work, or donating to that or whatever.
I knew St. Mary's was going to come up. Jason gets to this.
So when we were in the legislature and talking about that project on numerous occasions, I thought it was going to be eligible because of water, wastewater. Now that they've tied the eligibility to the criteria in the SRF programs, drinking water and clean water, I need to look up the guidelines for those to give you a better answer. So Miles, I have that on my list. I mean, Eric wanted to try and convince me that we could do county roads because the ditches have water in them. So,
I'm not joking. Remember at one point, they were calling them waters of the US. And so I'm saying if we're doing road work to improve countywide ditches, that's a water improvement. I sent it to the executive director of NACo and he laughed and said, nice try.
Yeah. So I need to look that up. I know that that's something that irrigation is one of the things that's certainly on the list. I do believe that St. Mary's also supplies municipal drinking water.
Yes, it does.
That would be the angle I would go with that one.
Okay.
And so the feds are going to put this test on the kind of a proportionality example. When they say you can't give money to another county, that it has to benefit your residents. If a bunch of counties got together and St. Mary's was an allowable project, you could proportionally put your money together with other counties. Some factor would have to be taken into consideration to do a larger project. And I also think a bunch of counties could get together and apply for the competitive side of the state money with their match to enhance what was budgeted in 632 for the 4 regional water systems. So I'm saying there needs to be a lot more work, but don't rule that out.
Yeah, and I would just want to pave the way for it, especially given that we would have multiple counties putting in significant investment to just make sure that I's were dotted and T's were crossed before we pulled the trigger on the expenditures.
Okay, thank you.
I think the fact that there's a municipal system connected to that helps for sure.
All right, I don't see any more questions in the chat nor hands raised, and I'll just call out, is there anything else that Eric or Jason, do you guys want to talk about, or any topics you want to bring up, or is there any other questions from the group?
One last thing for me. Stateside with the 632 funds, I was hoping to have DEQ, DNRC, and Commerce participate in this meeting today. They're starting to get the process, the application, the timeframes, and a website was supposed to be up and running to advise counties how they can get access to their funds and how they can do the application process. I'm assuming, since I didn't hear back from them confirming their participation here, that it's not up and ready yet. And when it does get up and ready, I think that probably will spark us to have a meeting faster than we're currently planning, because we're planning 3 weeks out, given our travel schedule 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, so that was a couple of things I wanted to bring up for district meetings. Obviously, we're going to talk about legislation, and this will be on the agenda as well. So we can have some face-to-face conversations about this and 632 when we're out and about in July. Second thing was, we're going to do our next one of these in 3 weeks instead of in 2. We will be in other meetings at 2 weeks from now, Friday. So yes, we will talk about gravel pits, Miles. That bill is still yet to be signed, so we're working on at least getting the fees taken care of on that front. And then lastly, for those of you that are submitting in your requests to the feds for your money, if you just drop me we got our money, or I got signed up and didn't have any trouble, or it was a nightmare. I know it's a nightmare to give your personal information away, but beyond that, if you have trouble, or if it's easy, or if they ask for something that I didn't bring up, please let me know. I have no way of going in there and doing it. So until I hear back from some folks that have done it, I don't know how hard it is, or if they ask for any other additional information. So a little help from everybody would be great. And then I'll know that we're having some success in getting those dollars down to the local level. I see we had one that got signed up, so good. But start requesting your money and we will start figuring out how you can spend it.
Back to you, Dan.
Yeah, just a thought that occurred to me. What happens, what if they use their personal identification to access the funds? Is that going to be the same person has to continue using, be the point of access, or the point of contact? And I guess I'm getting to the point is, what happens if they retire, don't get reelected in the future?
I think somebody else could sign in for the next round of money next year.
Okay,
And give the
so
same
okay,
ACH, the transfer.
Yeah, the ACH, the banking information is not going to change. It's just another way of them assuring that they're not mailing out $1 trillion to the wrong places.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's overkill, but it's the golden rule, and they have the gold.
Yep. Okay.
Believe me, I
Great.
thought of creating the 57th county in Montana and calling it Bryson County so I could put my own bank account in there and see if I can get a distribution. It's reasons like that that they're making a person fill out the forms so the transfer can take place to a real entity.
And I give you an instance where it could really be used. When I was doing economic development, I had ACH and Dunn's number and Sam's information for counties that I worked with. So in theory, if that's all I needed, I could have gone in and sent that to a different bank account. But by having to give my personal information, now they got me on the hook for that. They know who got it. So
Okay, good. All right. All right, folks, I think that's about it. Oh, we just signed.
we'll see you in 3 weeks.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your participation. And again, when this has been recorded, we'll get this, as soon as it's rendered, I'll send it on to MACo and we'll put it up on our website as well. So have a great weekend. Thanks for participating and enjoy your spring.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, everyone.
See ya.
See ya.
Hey, everyone, have a good one.